Hi guys, welcome to another live. I'm very excited to have you guys here tonight. And if this is your first time in my channel watching one of my lives, welcome. We do lives about the Bible. We do Bible readings. So in today's live, we're going to be reading chapter 15 of Genesis. So in the lives that we do, we read the Bible in consecutive order. So from Genesis all the way to the book of Revelation, right? So right now we're in chapter 15 of Genesis. So we already did all the other chapters before chapter 15. So if you guys are welcome to go watch those videos so you guys can learn more about the Word of God. Sorry, I think it froze. So that you guys know more about the Word of God, right? So today, as you guys already saw in the title, we're going to be reading about the promise that God did to Abraham, right? Remember that Abraham was an old man. He was almost 100 years old, and his wife was also old, and he didn't have any kids. His wife couldn't have any kids, right? So the promise of God that God made to Abraham is that he was gonna give him a great a big family. And Abraham was asking God, how, right? How are you going to give me a big family, big descendants, a great descendants if I don't even have one kid? So let's read chapter 15 of Genesis. That this is what this chapter is about. And then, so let's read it so you guys can understand later on what we're about to read in the other lives that we're going to do. So it says, chapter 15, after this, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abraham said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abraham said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, then he said to him, So shall your offsprings be. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited to him as righteousness. So this is very important when we read this part where it says that Abraham believed the Lord, right? After all that was happening, after Abraham lost his nephew Lot, because if you guys were here for the last life, we learned that Lot went to Sodom and Gomorrah, right, to live there. And basically, Lot was the nephew of Abraham. He was the son of Abraham's brother. But the sad part is that Abraham's brother died. That's why Lot was always with Abraham, because he didn't have a father and Abraham didn't have a son, right? So Abraham thought that his descendants were going to come from Lot. But God told him that they were not going to come from Lot. They were going to come from his own children, right? And this is the promise that that God made to Abraham, that he was going to give him a son, right? And a great descendants. So after everything that Abraham was going through, after looking at his wife, that she was very old, and that he was very old, and that she couldn't have any kids, right? He still trusted God. He still trusted that God was going to give him a kid, a son, right? And this is something that we should always do. Even if the situation looks difficult or impossible, we should always trust God that He is going to fulfill His promise, right? So it says, he also said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of the Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it. Remember that the land that God is talking about is Canaan, the land of Canaan. And Abraham was living in that land at the time. So it's very interesting because Israel, the land of Canaan, is what we know today of where Israel is at. So we know that God fulfilled his promise. Abraham had a great descendants, right? And they lived in the land of Canaan. So basically, God gave Abraham's descendants the land of Canaan. So we see that God fulfilled his promise. It says, but Abraham said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of this land? So the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Abraham brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite to each other. The bird, however, he did not cut in half. Then birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abraham drove them away. As the sun was setting, Abraham fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. Right? So right here, God was telling Abraham that his descendants were going to be strangers in a country. They were going to be mistreated and enslaved in that country. So basically, this was a prophecy that God was telling Abraham that was going to happen. And this indeed happened. Israel was in Egypt for 430 years. So it was like a prophecy that Abraham was telling, that God was telling Abraham that this was going to happen to his descendants. It says, God said, but I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. So remember that in the land of Canaan, the Amorites used to live there, and all these other group of people, right? So God was waiting for them to their sin, right? Their sin reached its full measure, and it says that he's telling Abraham that after these 400 years, because they're living in Canaan, right? Obviously, Abraham is going to have his son in Canaan, and their descendants, they're going to grow up in the land of Canaan. But then after that, they're going to be taken to Egypt to be slaves in Egypt. And then after 430 years, they're going to come back to the land of Canaan. It says, when the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces, between all the dead animals. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham and said, to your descendants I give this land from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river the Euphrates, the lands of the Canaanites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girshites, and Jebusites. I don't know how do you pronounce those. It's very difficult to pronounce them. But yeah, all those group of people were living there. They had possession of the land of Canaan, but God said to Abraham that for sure his descendants were going to have that land. So we see that today, in these days, Israel is living there because the Israelites, what we know as Jewish, the Jewish people, they are Abraham's descendants. So the lands where they're living at, which is Israel, is theirs, right? You see all this conflict between Palestine and Israel. Well, actually, who's right in all that conflict is Israel. The land is theirs, and it's not Palestine's land. But there's always like the enemy trying to take Israel away from the promised land. So guys, that's everything for this live. I hope you guys like this live. And if you guys like it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you guys know more and learn more about the Word of God. I'll see you in the next live, and God bless you all. Bye.